Hello, and welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. Each episode, we talk about a particular topic in the life of a professor. Ruth is a visiting professor at a large university in Ireland, and Claire is an associate professor at a primarily undergraduate university in Northern California. The purpose of our podcast is reflection, so we bring something we think is working and something we're working on to discuss. Welcome to the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. I'm Claire.
And I'm Ruth. And today we're talking about meetings. But before we do that, Claire, how was your week?
My week was good. Yesterday I had one of those days that, you have two things. There were two things I really felt like I needed to do, and I could really only do one of them. And I built them both into such big things that I didn't really want to do either of them. And so I just did option 3, which was neither of them. And anyway, it kind of reminded me about I don't know. I think it's really easy to build things up into oh man, I haven't been working on this in so long and I really want to work on it. And then it just becomes this monster of I've been wanting to work on it. I'm behind. I don't know. I have all these feelings associated with it. So it was a really good reminder for me to feel I don't know, not associating all those things with it. I'm excited about doing both option 1 and option 2. And I don't know. So anyway, reminded me to be excited about what it is that I'm doing.
That's really interesting for lots of reasons. But it's just so interesting, because you do encounter people who don't seem to have emotional baggage about things. And you're like, what would that be like? Do you know what I mean? Because it's so...
I know.
And my thing this week was kind of not quite the same, but similar, where I was quite sick this week, and surprise, surprise, to regular listeners of the pod will not be surprised by that, but I had my usual ear infection cropped up, and anyway. But the thing that was really stupid was I took Monday off work because the kids were off, and I was like, we're going to spend time together and do all of these different things. We're going to make this thing and do this art, and I just should have let go of it and just been yes, but I'm sick, so I'm not doing those things. So instead, I kind of hobbled on and was super grumpy about, you know what I mean? And
yes.
And super frustrated with myself because I wasn't getting the things done. And sometimes I'm not good at pivoting and being no, I'm just sick today. Today's a write-off. I just need to, you know what I mean? And so I'm too attached to whatever idea I had for the day. So yes, I think... probably won't happen. And of course, when you have an ear infection is not the time when you're super introspective and figuring things out. But I wish I had just could let go of things quicker and just move on to okay, this is my new reality over here and this is what I'm doing instead. So yes.
I know exactly. Yeah, totally. It reminds me of whenever I'm reading a book or watching something or even just thinking about a character doing something. I imagine them as 100% committed and focused to whatever it is they're doing. And it's they're sick, but they're blissfully in bed reading a book and they're just totally into that. Or it's they're doing laundry and how wonderful that would be to just be focused on doing the laundry. Anyway, so it's fun to remember that that's actually just a decision that we have. And totally. I know what you mean. When you have the ear infection is not the time when you have the clear-headedness to say,
I'm super zen. I'm what would make me feel better?
Yeah, yes. Exactly.
Yeah, totally. But so I have a quote this week, and it is, so I really I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, noir books, and I really like detective stories, and I kind of like noir movies, but particularly books. But then since I had kids, I like them less. Do you know what I mean? And I don't have the same tolerance for grim stuff. Do you know what I mean? So mostly, I think I've told you before, I read young adult fiction because I feel it's, there's a safety net there. But for whatever reason, when I was sick the other day, I was no, I just want to read this series of books that I've read 8 times or something. I absolutely love them. They're just so well crafted. So anyway, my quote is from Dennis Lehane. He's just amazing. So this is the quote. So there are threads in our lives and you pull one and everything else gets affected. And so it seems it's really basic, but it's because then I've been kind of feeling embarrassed about the kids being sick and me being sick and starting the new job. And my boss said something, he's I don't know a single person whose life doesn't impact their work. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know why I think that other people are just that, you know what I mean? So anyway, I think that's the other thing I'm trying to remember is we are all complicated humans with things going on, and it's not
Yeah.
the end of the world. Yes.
I think it's a totally false dichotomy to be like, there's your work life and there's your rest of your life. And like, no, we're all doing things and we're all experiencing things. We all have ideas and we're all working on things. I don't know. It's just it's just life.
Totally. So So it's two things. One is I do actually really enjoy noir stuff. And two, that life is, we're all full humans and stuff will impact other stuff. So yeah. So tell me, why are we talking about meetings today?
So we're talking about meetings. I was thinking about meetings recently because I'm in this new group of 6 people, and there's 2 people who are kind of quiet, and I really value their insights and think they're excellent insights. But if I am not careful, it's really easy to not even hear their insights because everybody else kind of takes over. So I was thinking about that, and then I was thinking about how your new job, you were saying, is meetings, and you have lots of meetings involved, and you're working with lots of people whose jobs are meetings, and so they have a lot of experience with meetings. So I just was really interested in exploring this concept of meetings a little bit with this new context of your job.
Yes, definitely.
So what's working for you with meetings?
So I think, like you said, because I'm in this new job, and I sort of said on here before, like, I used to feel like meetings just took me away from my work, which was preparing for classes or teaching classes, and then recognizing like, oh wait, like this is my job. And I think at the moment, the space that I'm in is, I'm just appreciating the craft of meetings and good meetings. Do you know what I mean?
Ooh,
so I
love that description.
Right. And like, I think I've said to you before that when we work together on the program that we worked together on in Humboldt, you were really, really good at running meetings. And I was like, ooh, yeah, this is good. But I don't know, apart from that, have I really recognized that there is a craft to meetings? Do you know what I mean? And that there is like good meetings. I thought, notwithstanding, I could see that you're a really effective communicator and you were always really good at getting me back on track, which is no mean feat. But like, I don't know, I hadn't realized that there's like a way, you know what I mean? So I also have found that the meetings that we have in my new job, like they're very productive. Do you know what I mean? So you'll come out at the end like, oh, we have planned the schedule for this event that has happened and people have been assigned tasks. And that's really, so I feel like I'm not necessarily fully understanding the engine parts, if you know what I mean, but I'm like beginning to really tune into like, this is a really good meeting. Like, what is good about this meeting? Why is this really good? Ooh. And yeah, so like, I think I haven't appreciated that before. And I think, like, I'll say more about it in the working on. But so I think I'm kind of going from coming out of a meeting being like, oh, I'm not really irritated and annoyed that nothing got done there. But I'm even like, oh, like in the meeting, like, oh yeah, that was a good point. And that was a good, so anyway, nice. I am observing and sort of noticing meetings. That's my current status. So yeah.
I love that. And it really makes me think, we've had a couple department chairs in chemistry where I really felt like they ran meetings well. And I've also taken inspiration from those people of how are they doing this? Let me try to do that. So have you noticed, like when you're saying, wow, this meeting is going really well, what kinds of things are you noticing about it that mean that it's going well?
I think, and I'm not sure, and I will do more observing, but I think the people who are like kind of running the meeting or who've called the meeting have a relatively clear idea of what they want to achieve. And that sounds like probably what everyone should do, but to me, that's not something I necessarily have identified before going into a meeting or before hosting a meeting. So I think they're quite clear about that. I think that most of the meetings I've been in have been really well facilitated in terms of making sure everybody contributes. Do you know what I mean? And then keeping everything on track. And even not just like me rambling about some random show or something, but also even like, oh, this really interesting idea came up and now we're off, and they're like, hang on, we'll have a different meeting about that. Let's stick with what we were doing. So I think that was really effective.
That's really
and
cool.
So, yeah, I think having a very clear idea of what they want to achieve and what needs to happen, and kind of, even though something could be a really fruitful discussion, like kind of recognizing when that's deviating from what you want to achieve and, saying it. So, yeah, I think that, and then I think kind of speaking to what you mentioned about the people who are quiet, because at first I was like, well, I'm not going to say anything because what the hell have I got to say? I've only literally just landed. And so, but the people in those meetings were like, oh, and what about you? And you're like, oh, okay. And, like, I think making sure that there's kind of equity of participation is also great.
Yeah. I love that. And I agree. Yeah, I've been in a few groups lately where I really felt like the person in charge of the meeting or just the group in general have been really good about touching in with the people who haven't contributed and inviting them to say something. And I do think that's really helpful to make sure that we get all their cool ideas. And if there's something they're concerned about or something that they really like, then we hear that. And I really like that. And I like what you're saying about this idea of having a clear goal for the meeting. And I think one of the problems that sometimes we fall into with meetings is it can be really tempting to say, well, we've got this big project, so let's just schedule weekly meetings for the indefinite future to work on it. And then I think there's that could be fine, but you do need a goal for each meeting, or else it just becomes picking up where we left off and not really knowing, and we've got this big task. And, so I think that can... Anyway, coming back to your concept of having a really clear, what are we doing in this particular meeting in advance, I think that's really, really helpful. And then also, keeping to time. I think I really value it when a meeting, we know how long the meeting's going to be, and we definitely end at the end. And if we need more time, then we'll schedule another meeting. If something came up that we want to talk about, we can schedule another one, but everyone knows what to expect. We're definitely going to end at 11:50, and then it doesn't balloon out with, other useful things that come up. But maybe we can be more intentional. Yes, we'll talk about those things next time. Or, well, we ran out of time, but we still have these great things that we want to talk about, so we'll do that at this other time. And that's one of the things that I really like if you're on a really scheduled academic calendar and it's like, somebody might have to teach at 11 and the meeting starts at 10, and at 10:50 people are out the door going to their next thing. And so I think that really helps with keeping to time. And I think keeping to time in turn also really helps the meeting productivity because everyone knows this is our time to talk about these things.
It was funny, in one of the universities that I worked in before, they had all classes started 10 minutes past the hour. Do you know what I mean? Like, instead of having it be 11 to 11:50, it was whatever. I'm sorry, you understand the concept. You don't need me to break it down for you. But meetings, like people who weren't teaching had it 11 to 11:50. Do you know what I mean? And it was so weird. Yes, it was super confusing. So yeah, I feel like I am a very awesome colleague, Tracy, really hammered home to me the timekeeping thing. And it's so hard because sometimes you're in the middle and you're like, no, but I had this amazing thing I want to say. But no, it's so worth giving people time to get to their next meeting and do whatever. And even online, because I think there's a temptation to knock off the 10 minutes because you're online. But it's like, of course, people need it just as much to go use the bathroom or get a cup of tea. You know what I mean? So I think timekeeping is super important. And I also wanted to throw in, I've been at a few active meetings, where it almost reminds me of a flipped classroom where, like, instead of, okay, I'm going to tell you that everyone should go and fill in the calendar with XYZ, they're like, we are going to take 10 minutes where we all do that together now. Or do you know what I mean? So that has also been really effective because you're like, oh, now that is actually done. And you don't have to, like,
we did it
with people.
Check mark.
Yeah,
that is nice. It's like seeing the meetings as time when we're getting work done instead of seeing it as time where we like figure out what work we're going to do, which is cool. Yeah, I like that.
Totally.
So what are you working on?
Yeah, so I think I have never given any thought to meetings. Do you know what I mean? And like a lot of obviously like the meetings that I've hosted have usually been me with students. Do you know what I mean? And so it's kind of a borderline class. Kind of, do you know what I mean? So, like with the research meeting, well, because it's very much like you're still the person at the center, you know what I mean? And it's like less collaborative, do you know what
Okay.
I mean? And more, with the research meetings, and I wasn't trying to necessarily do this, but like they were presenting what their results were and what they worked on. And do you know what I mean? So I think I'm just realizing I haven't given a lot of thought to meeting craft. And I think the thing I really want to work on, and I haven't been in a position where I'm really hosting meetings necessarily, but I really want to work on even just stopping myself and being like, what do I want to get out of this meeting? Like, what would a successful outcome be? Or what is it I'm trying to work towards here? Because it sounds pathetic, but like I haven't ever, sometimes you're just like, oh, we're meeting about that project and not like we're meeting about the project and I want to get the first half of the schedule done or whatever it is. So I think I'm still kind of juvenile about meetings where I just rock up and I'm like, hey, what are we doing? And you know what I mean? So I think I would definitely like to think more and be more. So I'm going to like observe all of these meeting geniuses and then try and emulate what they're doing.
I love that. Have you noticed with these meeting geniuses, are the goals known to everyone in advance? Or do you determine the goals at the beginning of the meeting? Or is it just known to the leader, but you know the general topics?
That's such a good question. And I don't know. I don't know. I feel like definitely sometimes people have been like, okay, and this is what we're going to achieve today. So I'm gonna tune into that and see if I notice, because I don't know if I've actually particularly noticed. But that's interesting because it's like doing the learning objectives, right? Like in class. So that's super interesting.
Yeah, because I feel like when you and I co-taught the freshman learning communities along with one other person, and the three of us, I think we did have regular meetings, but I think we were pretty, we knew that we had to be ready for class next week.
Yes.
And so that was kind of first priority. What do we need to get ready for the class next week based on whatever topics we're covering? But then we would also, I think we would have a little discussion like, oh, and let's also touch base about this weird thing that came up about the homeworks. At the beginning of our meeting, I think we would kind of toss around some things like, these are some other things that I think would be nice for us to discuss as a group. So anyway, I felt like that went pretty well. And just having a little at the beginning, did anything else come up that we need to discuss? Moment.
Yeah. And I think it's good to have the few minutes of people just shooting the breeze at the beginning.
Yes, me too.
Because I think,
me too.
Yeah. So I think, and that can be like a good temperature check of just, whatever. So I think, yeah, that can be helpful, even though I always try and drag it on and like, so like, yes, but I still think it's good.
I 100% agree. I want to emphasize that it's not about every single second we are like blowing boundaries on productivity. I totally think the first few minutes of, oh, how was your week? Or I don't know, whatever it is very meaningful, and just the chit chat. And then we launch into whatever it is we're trying to talk about. I completely agree.
Totally. Just a landing time. But so what are you working on?
So I'm working on, I feel like, sometimes when I'm not the leader of the group, I wonder how to best help productivity. Like if I'm the leader, I can kind of say, this is how we're doing the meeting. These are our goals. If someone's talking too much, I can say, all right, thank you. Let's hear from so-and-so, but if I'm not the leader and I feel like someone's talking too much and I want to hear from so-and-so, do I do something? How can I facilitate that? I mean, sometimes you can just say, oh, and what do you think, so-and-so? Or like, something like that. So I guess I'm wondering, like, I don't want to, the thing is that there is a leader of the group and they might have a different plan than I do. And so I think my number one goal should be to support whatever that plan is. So I don't want to be undermining it accidentally by trying to make the meeting go the way that I would have the meeting go, because maybe they have a different plan. So I don't know. I was just kind of thinking about that.
I think that's so interesting, because there's a weird etiquette thing. Then what is the etiquette? But I think what you're saying though might be two separate things.
Okay, tell me.
Do you know what I mean? So I think, and I don't know. This is my immediate response, that you kind of encouraging other people to join in, I think that should always be okay. Do you know what I mean? And so asking people like, oh, what do you think? Joe, and what do you think? Obviously not being like, be quiet, Joseph, or whatever. Like, I don't know why it's Joseph and Joe, but do you know what I mean? But like, creating kind of inclusion for people and inviting people to participate. I think that's like the leader of the meeting would probably never had the agenda that they don't want to hear from
Right,
Joe.
that's
So
true.
I think that's completely fine, and if they do, then I still think it's completely fine. But then like, if you're like, no, I think I really want to talk about Plan X, like maybe that's not
Good point.
cool, or
Good point.
so. But I think in terms of inviting participation, I think that probably is always okay.
So it's kind of like helping the meeting go smoothly is good. So inviting
Yes.
participation, throwing out an idea that I feel like is being overlooked, contributing if we're just having a general discussion, trying to contribute ideas, all of that's good. But yeah, if the leader is trying to make a movement, okay, now we're going to switch to this other topic. I mean, I would have to feel really darn committed to, oh, wait, no, I have one more thing to say in order for that to be the appropriate move, because probably the move is to go to the new topic if
Right.
it's time to go to the new topic.
Well, it's just, I mean, and I'm saying this because I also know you and you're so not heavy-handed. So I can't imagine that you'd be like, whatever, Bill, like, we're going to keep it like, so yeah, I don't think, but I don't know. And I think though, maybe that's on the leader. If you want to be like, hang on, there's one more thing I want to say about this. I think maybe that's okay if you do that. And maybe then it's up to them to be like, Claire, rein it in. We don't have time right now. I really want to get to this next
That's
thing.
true.
Or
That's true.
whatever effective way they have of saying that. So maybe you don't have to do the work of figuring out. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe you don't have to.
I think you're right. I think it's more about being genuinely trying to help with the goals of this meeting. And so if I have some idea that I really want to share that I feel like we're skipping over, then I think it'd be worth trying to say, oh, wait, I had this idea. If we're trying, if we're moving to a new topic, then, and I feel ready to move to a new topic, then fantastic, be fully committed to moving to the new topic. Anyway, yeah, just trying to contribute as genuinely as possible to what the goals are. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Right. And then like, you're really, as long as you're receptive to someone being like, no, sorry, I want to move on because it's really important to me to finish this thing. Then I think, because, and it's not quite the same thing, but I used to always say to students, because they were like, I was like, you can ask any question during the exam and I might tell you like, no, that's actually what I'm testing and I can't answer that. But
right,
it's fun,
right.
You know what I mean? And so I think it's kind of that where like, you can, I mean, within reason, sort of do anything you want in the meeting and it's up to the person in charge,
That's a good point. If you feel like this, that might be a side point, is related and you want to bring it up, then maybe it's worth bringing it up.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think so. So, and again, I don't know why I'm at, like, as if, because I'm like, this person should be a skilled person who could totally, and then I'm like, I never think about meetings. So anyway, but, I still think that's part of the leadership thing, right? Is sort of steering the ship.
It is. And even if you, hopefully you come in just like you've been planning with this super clear goal of what you want to do with the meetings. But even if you haven't, if somebody's going off topic, you can sense that. And you're like, okay, great thoughts, but we're actually trying to work on this other thing. So let's pivot. I think you would feel that intuitively, hopefully. And you'd feel it more and more strongly depending on how clear you were about what the goals were for the meeting.
Right. And it's a little bit like, when you're teaching sometimes, and most of the time you really do need to hustle people along and be like, okay, but then sometimes you are like, wait, nobody gets this. I need to just stop and throw out the plan and just go over whatever this was. Because so yeah, I think probably that's the thing, is kind of be clear about what you want to achieve, but then have inbuilt flexibility too.
I think you're right. And that's a really good analogy. Because sometimes if there's no point in rushing through the end of the material if it's not going to be effectively communicated because we missed something.
Right.
And so similarly in the meeting, if somebody has this really, now we suddenly realize we actually need to talk about this thing before we can get to what we were planning to talk about. Okay, then I guess we need to do that.
Totally. So I feel like this is sort of, for me at least, this meetings episode is maybe we'll repeat it later and I'll report in when I figured out meetings and how to do it. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Keep learning the lessons and bringing them to us.
Yeah. And can I add a weird thing?
Yes.
So I wanted to, because we always ask, like, we would love listeners to get in touch, but I wanted to, particularly because I think we have a few listeners in Ireland. So if anybody who is a listener in Ireland wants to get in touch, we would love to hear from you, because Ireland is so small and maybe we could even have a cup of tea sometime. So yes, please do get in touch.
Fantastic. Yes. And we are always interested in hearing from anybody about any questions you might have or any topics you might want to hear discussed. And we would love to discuss them.
Yay. Thanks so much for joining us on the Professor Podcast with Ruth and Claire. We're delighted to have you as a listener, and we would love to hear from you. And if you want to email us, our address is contactprofessorpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any of your suggestions for future shows or professor quotes that you might want to share with us, or even just things that have come up for you when you were listening to previous episodes. And if you've been enjoying the podcast, we would love if you would spread the word. So the best way to spread word is by telling people you know if you think they should listen to it, or you can leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.